What is up, everybody? Giovanna back again for an extra ghetto video. And today, we got this article coming to us from, I think it's BBC? Yeah, BBC. Why the Empire Strikes Back is overrated. Now, some initial thoughts going into this. Personally, you might have seen me say, that I think Empire Strikes Back is the most overrated Star Wars movie ever. That doesn't necessarily mean I'm saying it's bad. I've never said Empire was bad. I think Empire is a great movie. It's just, in my opinion, the way the fans have reacted to it and over the years, I think it's overrated. And I think it's overrated because people love to gas up the I Am Your Father twist. People are like, oh, it's the perfect middle movie. Just because it's a good sequel doesn't mean it's like the best movie sequel of all time. You know what I mean? And also, just now it's kind of becoming like this showcase for Last Jedi defenders of subverting expectations, and I feel like Rian Johnson kind of used that to make his movie, if that makes any sense whatsoever. Just kind of in the sense of like, oh, I'm gonna subvert expectations because that's what everybody liked in Empire. You know what I mean? But anyways, let's get into it. The general consensus is that the second in the original Star Wars trilogy, released 40 years ago, is the best. In fact, it's to blame for the franchise's problems. Well, I don't think that's also true. I do not think that's true. It hasn't caused any problems in the franchise. I think you could actually say that Return of the Jedi was the most hated of the original trilogy movies. I think, obviously, I wasn't alive for Empire, but I heard, nobody believed the I Am Your Father twist, but it seems to me that most people gassed the shit out of it. But I don't think it has caused any problems. It's 40 years this month since The Empire Strikes Back was released, and for most of that time, the second film in the Star Wars series has been enshrined as the best. The darkest, the most complex, the most mature. I think those are very valid things you could say about it. But anyways, directed by Irvin Kershner, it's the Star Wars episode with the highest score from critics on Rotten Tomatoes, 94%, and from viewers on IMDb, 8.7. And the one that is said to elevate the saga as a whole is because of the emotions stirred in Empire, wrote Roger Ebert in the Chicago Sun-Times, when the film was re-released in 1997, that the entire series takes on a mythic quality that resonates back to the first and ahead of the third. This is the heart. I wish I could agree. This might come across as a contrarian hot take, but it seems to me that the best film in the Star Wars franchise is in fact Star Wars. I know we're supposed to call it A New Hope these days, but it was called Star Wars when it came out in 1977, so that's good enough for me. Yeah, I'm going to be honest with you. I think A New Hope is not my favorite Star Wars movie. It's actually my second favorite, but in my opinion, A New Hope is the best Star Wars movie. It set up this whole universe of things, and it was, in my opinion, it's the perfect standalone movie. Not necessarily the perfect standalone movie, but it's a perfect mix of a standalone movie and a movie that you could add sequels to. It just worked so well. You know what I mean? And I'm trying to make sense here, but I'm really bad at making sense. You could check out my top 10 movies. I actually put this at number 3, A New Hope. But yeah, I think A New Hope is the best Star Wars movie. Just the way we're introduced into everything, just a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. If it wasn't for A New Hope, we wouldn't have had all these Star Wars sequels and prequels. So I think A New Hope, I mean, yeah, you could say A New Hope is overrated, but it's not. People like to gas Empire way more. Where was I? What's more, it seems obvious that The Empire Strikes Back is the source of all the franchise's problems. Yeah, I don't disagree with that, but I don't agree with that, but we're gonna keep reading. Whatever issues we geeks grumble about when we're discussing the numerous prequels and sequels, they can all be traced back to 1980. I should add, before too many people attempt a Darth Vader-style force stroke through the internet, that I wouldn't be saying this if I wasn't in awe of what George Lucas has accomplished as the writer and director and producer of the original Star Wars. That swashbuckling adventure. Those iconic characters, that lived-in world with its wealth of history, mythology, politics, and technology. I wouldn't say too much politics. The original trilogy didn't have too much politics in it. That's mainly just the prequels. I'm not completely happy with Alec Guinness's toupee, but otherwise, Lucas's masterpiece gets more astonishing with every rewatch. Really, I actually think Alec Guinness was one of the best parts of A New Hope. He really embodied that mysterious character of Obi-Wan really well. That wise old man that you don't know too much about. You know what I mean? I think Alec and Ewan were both great, but I think Alec really set us up there. Then came The Empire Strikes Back, a gloomier film, admittedly, but also a slower, stodgier, more contrived, convoluted, and repetitive one. Again, I'm not being perverse here. In 1980, several critics were underwhelmed, including Vincent Canby of the New York Times, who stated that the sequel wasn't as fresh and funny and surprising and witty as Star Wars. But then again, I think that's kind of the point of Empire. It's supposed to be that dark movie. You know what I mean? It's like that middle movie where, because, it's literally in the name, The Empire Strikes Back. You know what I mean? Like, that's the Empire striking back. The good guys aren't supposed to win in this movie. That's when Return of the Jedi comes in. You know what I mean? I think the thing with Star Wars is that even with the sequels, I have to admit it, the titles are very, like, the titles fit the movies very well. You know what I mean? You could see why The Empire Strikes Back is called The Empire Strikes Back. It makes total sense because the Empire is striking back. The good guys lose. It was, he believed, a big, expensive, time-consuming, essentially mechanical operation. I wouldn't go that far, but let's be sensible about this. The production design is clearly not on the same level as Star Wars. The rebel base on the ice planet looks roughly what you'd expect a rebel base on an ice planet to look like. The plain, white plastic corridors of Cloud City could have been salvaged from the studio bins after a Star Trek film had wrapped. Believe it or not, I could actually kind of agree with this to a certain extent, but then again, Empire was just not really a colorful movie. You could probably say those same criticisms of Tatooine, how it's not as colorful as like the prequels, in Coruscant, and all these cities, Naboo, you know what I mean? I think the scenery in the prequels was the best. But also, like with the originals, do you know what I mean? You had Endor, which was probably the most colorful you got out of all the cities, you know what I mean? Tatooine, I think this, as I said before, this criticism goes for Tatooine as well. But yeah, I agree. I don't think the white, you know what I mean? I think it was very bland, especially Cloud City was meh. You know what I mean? It was overall like just that sunset and sunrise color and then some white and shit. You know what I mean? But I agree. I think like visual stuff could have been way better. You know what I mean? I think especially for Hoth, you know what I mean? But then again, you have to keep in mind it was different. You know what I mean? No matter where we were on Star Wars, you saw a different atmosphere every time, and each planet was unique to its own atmosphere, which is really cool. But yeah, I could understand that. I like colorful stuff too. The most colorful thing you got in Hoth was explosions and Luke Skywalker's outfit. These shortcomings are disguised by Peter Sujitsky's, I think that's how you say it, atmospheric cinematography, a master of shadows, reflections, and deep color. He would go on to be David Cronenberg's regular director of photography. But not even Sushinsky's, I think that's how you say that, Sushinsky's spine-tingling work can improve the derivative story. Key events in Star Wars include Luke Skywalker being knocked unconscious by a wilderness alien, Princess Leia being captured by Darth Vader, Luke learning about the Force from a Jedi Master in a remote cave, a lightsaber duel that ends badly for the good guys, a scoundrel abandoning the rebels before having a change of heart, and a protracted battle between the ranks of the Rebel Alliance and the heavily armed Empire. Switch around the order of those events, and you've got The Empire Strikes Back. And while the screenwriters Lawrence Kasdan and Leigh Brackett did a clever job of revising and reshuffling our favorite scenes, that hardly compares to Lucas's achievement of dreaming up those scenes in the first place. Okay, it portrays Star Wars trashing so much of the good work that was done 3 years earlier. Okay, I wouldn't go as far as saying it betrays Star Wars and it contradicts everything. I wouldn't go as far as saying that Empire did that. But yeah, I agree with this criticism here. You know what I mean? Like, because the thing is, with A New Hope, it's essentially good guys win. And then in New Empire, it's bad guys win. And then in Return of the Jedi, good guys win for a long time. You know what I mean? It's just that classic fairy tale story, you know what I mean? And that's why I think that Empire was like genius in that sense of making like that dark middle movie. But then again, you know what I mean? It's nothing that really broke boundaries, I feel like. I think you could say that the first Star Wars installment by George definitely broke some boundaries. But Empire, you know what I mean? I feel like it was nothing too crazy for that time. I mean, I wasn't alive, so I can't say jack shit. But you know what I mean? It was... Because the thing is, I feel like it worked so well as a sequel because of A New Hope setup. You know, I'm going to stop ranting. Setting a bad example. But here's where things get tricky. My grievance with The Empire Strikes Back isn't that it sticks to the winning formula established by Star Wars. That's what most sequels do, after all. My grievance is that it also portrays Star Wars, trashing so much of the good work that was done 3 years earlier. Yeah, I don't really agree with that. My un-Jedi-like anger bubbles up even before the first scene, at the beginning of the opening crawl of introductory text, to be precise. It is a dark time for the rebellion, says the prose preamble. Although the Death Star has been destroyed, Imperial troops have driven the rebel forces from their hidden base and pursued them across the galaxy. Hang on a minute. Although the Death Star had been destroyed, The sole aim of the heroes and the heroines in Star Wars was to destroy the Death Star, a humongous planet, pulverizing spaceship, and crucial strategic importance to the Empire. Yeah, I could agree with this. You know what I mean? Like, because if you think about it, that's why the first Star Wars movie stands alone by itself. The good guys end up winning, and they have a celebration at the end. You know what I mean? But obviously, there's still room. You know what I mean? People want things answered. You know what I mean? So, in all honesty, I think just me, myself, I would have been satisfied with Episode 4 being the only Star Wars movie. But then again, having these sequels and then that lead on to the prequels and maybe, sequel trilogy if you like that stuff. You know what I mean? That's what kickstarted all this Star Wars lore. I'd even say Empire is more responsible for kickstarting more Star Wars than A New Hope was. You know what I mean? Obviously, without A New Hope, we wouldn't have Empire Strikes Back. But then again, it just kind of exploded into this lore, and then we started getting more things answered, and more things started being explored. You know what I mean? If that makes any sense, I could be not making sense. One of their big cheeses announced that the fear of this battle station would keep every dissenter in line. Another hailed it as the ultimate power in the universe. But now the rebels' demolishing of the ultimate power in the universe is waved aside with an although that frankly is not on. And it's just the first of many instances when The Empire Strikes Back asks us to pretend that Star Wars didn't happen. Like, sure, I could understand where he's coming from in the sense of, like, oh, it undid it. But I don't think it undid it, you know what I mean? I think it's still told, like, a cohesive story. Because then again, this story is supposed to follow the Skywalkers. The original trilogy is mainly supposed to follow Luke. Even though this did, when the prequels came out, George said this is Anakin's story. I think it's Anakin's story from 1 through 6, but also, the spotlight has been pointed towards Luke in the original trilogy. You know what I mean? And I think Luke's story was really the best part of the original trilogy. I mean, because that's what it literally was supposed to be. And then all this side stuff, you know what I mean? Like, I don't think it's too much of a big deal, but then again, it's like, nobody's talking about it. So I can understand where his frustration is, because people love to, like, praise this movie endlessly. Yeah, because the thing is, and also just with the original trilogy in general, like, people love to act like it's perfect, you know what I mean? People, I feel like, definitely put it up on a pedestal, and I'm glad we're kind of dying out with that feeling. Okay, yeah, let's keep going. Remember that scene in Star Wars when an Imperial Admiral marked Darth Vader for his sad devotion to the ancient Jedi religion? Forget it, because in The Empire Strikes Back, we're told that the Emperor himself is devoted to the same religion. Not really, that's just, like, the art of being a Sith. You know what I mean? The thing is, Jedi and Sith are, like, two different things. And at that time, we were like, oh, yeah, Luke is the Jedi and Darth Vader is this big evil bad guy. But then with the prequels, we go, oh, no, the villain is really the victim. But the thing is, Palpatine was dedicated to the art of being a Sith. What about Obi-Wan Kenobi? Remember how he started training Luke to be a Jedi Knight, partly because his previous pupil, Darth Vader, turned to the dark side of the Force. Narrative logic demands that the ghostly Obi-Wan should keep on training Luke in The Empire Strikes Back, and send his new apprentice into combat against his old one. Forget it, the poor chap is cold-shouldered so that Yoda can train Luke instead. So I'm not entirely sure what this person is trying to imply here, but the thing is, that's why we have the prequels, is to show that downfall of Anakin, and to show how Obi-Wan and Anakin were brothers, and then it showed leading up into, it didn't make Obi-Wan this ambiguous figure, you know what I mean? It made him this old dude with, like, freaking PTSD because he saw his brother basically burn in the lava, you know what I mean? Watching Star Wars and The Empire Strikes Back one after the other is like watching a hijacking. You're seeing a juggernaut being held up and driven in another direction. You can sense that Lucas and his team aren't focused on the current film anymore. They're setting up the third part in what would now be a trilogy. Exactly. I think he kind of just proved his own point there. Because the reason why Empire's like this, because Empire was meant to be a middle movie, and they definitely planned out the fact that they were going to have a finale, which would be the third movie. You know what I mean? Like, that's the thing that works so perfect. You have A New Hope, just this mysterious movie that's setting everything up. Then you have Empire, which expands on this, and it's like the bad guys win, you know what I mean? Let's see where the heroes take the story. Like, the movie literally ends with the heroes staring out into space. Like, their friend Han Solo was just in freaking carbonite. Like, what are they gonna do? You know what I mean? And it was interesting seeing how it played out in Return of the Jedi. I'm gonna be honest with you, I would agree with this guy if Return of the Jedi didn't exist. But then again, this also set up for another movie. It's like the movies were kind of setting each other up, if that even makes any sense. And they are no longer interested in Wars in the Stars. Despite its title, The Empire Strikes Back is really about the Alliance versus the Empire. It's about who's related to whom and who's in love with whom. Okay, I could kind of agree with that. It twists the saga from the political to the personal, from space opera to soap opera. Not necessarily. Not really. There's not politics jammed in the original trilogy. Yeah, you could argue the prequels, how George said it was inspired by Bush politics and all that stuff, but there was really not that many politics in the original trilogy, unless you count the Empire as some dictatorial space regime. Then sure. Yeah, again, I think Lucas actually said it was meant to imitate a soap opera, but they call it a space opera because it takes place in space. Is it possible to say whether the Empire is better or worse off at the end of the film? After all that supposed striking back, not really. None of that matters. Apparently, compared to the booming declaration, "I am your father." If the Empire, he already said that. If The Empire Strikes Back had been a one-off, I could have forgiven it by now. No, not necessarily. Empire Strikes Back is not good as a singular movie at all. It is, the thing is, it works really well as a middle movie. But yeah, it's not good as a one-off because what we have Han Solo and Carbonite. What are we supposed to think, that Han Solo just lost? That's not going to make you feel better about yourself. You know what I mean? We literally end off the movie with Luke, Leia, C-3PO, and R2-D2 staring out into space. That's not an ending. That's not a standalone movie. You can't make Empire a standalone movie. But what about all the many films that have used it as a model? All the films that have tarnished Star Wars by contradicting its mythos and obsessing over its family trees? That's where I kind of think where the sequel trilogy comes in. You know what I mean? Like how The Last Jedi and how its defenders use Empire as a model when it doesn't really make any sense. It's like they defend it in the sense that Ryan took risks and subverted our expectations, and then they use it in the sense of, oh, we've subverted expectations in Empire before. Like, which one is it? Are you trying to be different, or are you trying to copy the original trilogy just to play it safe and make money? You know what I mean? Doesn't make any sense. All the tiresome dramatic revelations which have tried and failed to be as mind-blowing as the one about Luke's lineage. I was annoyed when Qui-Gon Jinn was shoehorned into Obi-Wan's past in The Phantom Menace. Annoyed when Rey became... Okay, so it seems like this guy is just complaining about everything. You think The Phantom Menace complains about everything? You have this guy complaining literally about all of Star Wars besides Episode 4. Annoyed when Rey became Palpatine's granddaughter or something in The Rise of Skywalker. Annoyed when the emergence of the all-conquering First Order in The Force Awakens reduced everything done by Luke, Leia, and Han Solo to a footnote. But I accept that the writers and directors to those films were only following the Empire Strikes Back example. And you know what I mean? I think I could actually agree with that to an extent because, then again, Empire's the best Star Wars movie. It's put up on this pedestal because that's what the fans like. You know what I mean? It's like things to make, it's fan service in order to make money. You know what I mean? That's what, like, but then again, you can't compare the prequels to The Empire Strikes Back. The prequels did not whatsoever follow an Empire Strikes Back formula. The prequels were original in their own beautiful ways. You know what I mean? The story was original. Obviously, there's some parallels to the original trilogy, but those things had to be there to make sense, to make the films 1 through 6 connect so well. I mean, yeah, obviously, I think that the sequel trilogy as a whole was following the original trilogy and repeated history just to make money. Of course I agree with that. That's the Hollywood formula. Look at Stranger Things. All 3 seasons are the same fucking plot. You know what I mean? It's just what makes money. But you can't compare. You can't just say, oh, just because I was annoyed with with Qui-Gon Jinn being shoehorned into Obi-Wan's past, doesn't mean it's following the same formula as Empire. Yeah, sure, I agree, with this whole lineage thing. But then again, like, you have Last Jedi defenders that are like, oh, I think it was stupid that Rey was a Palpatine because Star Wars is not about lineage. But then again, you have George that made Star Wars pretty much about lineage. So it's like this whole tug of war between dumb shit. It's not just Star Wars films that have made the exasperating mistake of prioritizing franchise building over simply making it a good film either. Think of all those films and TV shows that will jump for joy when the villain is revealed to be Sherlock Holmes' sister or James Bond's childhood pal. Think of all those superhero blockbusters that waste time teeing up the next installment in the series. I'm sorry. No, what the fuck is wrong with me? I'm sorry, but The Empire Strikes Back has to take the blame for all of them. Search your feelings, you know it'd be true. Okay, not necessarily. My biggest issue, though, is how he's complaining that Empire just blew up the whole series and set it back. I could agree in a sense that it set a bad example just because, people do overrate it. I don't think Empire's overrated because of the movie itself, well, partly, but I think it's overrated just because of the way people reacted to it. And I think that's what I can kind of agree with here, is, like, especially how we saw it being used as this, like, Kickstarter for the sequel trilogy and shit. Not even just Empire, just the whole original trilogy in general. But then again, that's like a sequel trilogy, J.J. Abrams, Rian Johnson problem. You know what I mean? But still, I think it's overrated, but then again, Empire isn't necessarily a bad movie. I think he was trying to allude that this was a bad movie because it was predominantly negative. Yeah, but please, let me know what you guys think. Today's video is definitely long. I interrupted this shit like 500 times. But, yeah, I would love to get a discussion going in the comments. I will see you all in another video. Peace out.